Well, welcome everybody. I'm Dave Martin. I'm an associate with the Centre for Policy on Ageing, and I'm delighted to be here working with the Ageless Thanet team. I'm just going to ask people to wave from the team, and they can do introductions a bit later on. But that's Emma, Heather, and Ian. And a couple of kind of house rules, I suppose. If you could keep your Zoom appliances or whatever they are on mute. And obviously you can choose to turn the camera off or not, but we are recording this, so you might want to consider that in terms of your visuals in the light of that. If you would like to do any introductions, you can put that in the chat room. And certainly if you've got any questions that arises during the course of the session, you've got any questions, put them in the chat room. There may not be a chance to respond to those questions today, but we assure you, the Ageless Thanet assures me, that we will be taking note of any questions and we'll be following that up afterwards. So don't be shy about raising any particular questions there. I'm just going to do a quick kind of so what are we trying to do today, and then I'm going to hand over to Ian, who's going to give a bit of background about the Ageless Thanet approach to co-production and empowerment. So that was a hint. Today's session is all about co-production and empowering communities. What we thought we would do is the Ageless Thanet team approached me about this session, and we've basically co-produced this session. Okay, so it's been quite a collaborative exercise, and in particular we thought we would actually pre-record some of the conversations that we've had, not only between the team, but most importantly, some of the older people who've played a key role in Ageless Thanet's programme, certainly on the government's board. So we're going to show some videos of those discussions, and the intentions of those discussions are to tease out some of the issues to do with co-production, but in particular, the concept of empowerment. Okay, so that's the idea, is to try and learn a bit collaboratively about what we mean by these terms, what works perhaps, but more importantly, what's the purpose, what's been important, and how do people feel. I don't think we often talk enough about how people feel being part of a process, what it's meaningful for them as a person. I think that's kind of about it. After those sessions, we'll then be having some breakout rooms, so that you'll be able to share your own particular journey on co-production and maybe raise some questions there, or share your learning itself. So I'm going to hand over now to Ian to tell us a bit about the co-production process in Ageless Thanet.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you to everyone for joining this afternoon. Really appreciate you taking time out of, no doubt, a busy schedule to join us. So I'm Ian Barker, says that on the screen. I'm the Wellbeing Programme Manager for Ageless Thanet, and work for one of the delivery partners within Ageless Thanet, and have been doing so. We're now in our 7th year. And from day one, co-production, empowerment, and working as hopefully an effective partnership was something that we always strived to do. And the early days was about really making sure that was on everyone's agenda, and we always and continue to always revisit that on regular occasions to make sure we are continuing on that journey of working as a successful partnership in co-production and empowering the older people of Thanet to grow older better. And one of the key, I guess, successes from that, which we're going to touch on throughout today's session, which Dave alluded to, is our governance panel. So before the project even kicked off, an important part for Ageless Thanet was to reach out to the older people of Thanet and begin to engage with them and say, right, this project may well be coming, hasn't been signed off, hasn't been agreed, the funding hasn't been secured, but to speak to the older people of Thanet and saying, this could come. If it did come, what would you want? How would you get involved? What suggestions would you make to really drive a culture of changing the perceptions of aging. And an important part of that, from that time right the way through to now, was to have a governance panel that in essence held us accountable as paid delivery partners. And the governance panel was, or is, sorry, made up of a cross-section of older people from Thanet. And they had to go through a fairly rigorous process to become members on the panel. It was heavily oversubscribed of interest, and there was a process of interviewing people to really understand how we could get a great cross-section of people from various demographics across the area to make the biggest impact for us, and to be the right people to want to be involved in this journey of partnership working, co-production and empowerment, with the requisite also to hold us accountable as delivery partners throughout the project. So it's a bit of an introduction there, Dave. Hopefully that's sowed the seed a bit from where we came from, where we are now, and in particular about the governance panel. Thanks, Dave.
Oh, thank you, Ian. And we're going to kick off, as I suppose if you've been familiar with the festival so far, with a question, a poll, kind of poll question. Emma or whoever's, do you want to set the questions up?
Yeah, so we're going to use a tool called Mentimeter, which some of you may be familiar with. But what I'm going to do is we've got a couple of options. You can either go to www.menti.com on your smartphone and you'll be able to input your answers on there, or equally you can go to a new tab in your Internet Explorer and go in there. Once you've got to that site, it's going to ask you for a code to join our specific questions, which is, I don't know, Heather, if you want to put it in a chat for me, but it's 66272762, which you can probably see at the top of your screen. Okay, so I can see we've got one person already who has preferred cats. We're literally just gonna, just for fun, just as a bit of a practice run before we get into the, I'll say the real questions, but I don't know, this might be the most important question for you. Okay, so I can see if we've got 5 people who are there. Yep, we've got another person. Yeah, that is exactly what I would have chosen. I have a cat and a dog. Okay, yeah, we can see we've got some more people joining now. I might just give another...
Neck and neck, Emma. Neck and neck.
Yeah, I'll just give another 30 seconds and then I'll move on to the next question. If you're having any trouble joining, you can always pop your answer in the chat. Oh, yep, we just had another one. Okay, so we're going to move on to the second question. So what one word describes what empowerment means to you? I think we lulled you into a false sense there of, you know, we're going to start asking the more difficult questions now. Brilliant. I love seeing how everyone's answers appear on the screen. It's really interesting. So the bigger the word, the more people have selected that as an answer.
Ah.
So yeah, so it looks like choice is the most popular answer there, followed by control.
Okay, it's brilliant because that that question and the answers and the thinking on that leads us nicely into the first film, which is with Pam.
I'm Pam Hancock. I'm a member of the Ageless Thanet governance panel that we consider every aspect of the project. What we're going to do, how we're going to do it, who's going to do it, and what our aims are. And we have to advise and vote on all other aspects of the project. I'd always worked in the community, district nurse, health visitor, and I just wanted to use the skills I had, basically. Use them for other people. Just can't leave it alone. Ageless Thanet has this terrific can-do atmosphere, vibe about it. It really helped me right at the beginning. And it was an anti-loneliness initiative which actually impacted on me at that time. My partner died. I wanted to take the funeral, and I just felt that because I'd been here, I'd just got the confidence to do it. I'd never done that before, and I didn't see why I shouldn't, because legally you can. And it wasn't one from the book. It was one I wrote, because it was my tribute to him. And I was the one that should have done it, I felt. And I'm so glad I did. And Ageless Thanet helped me to do that. I mean, you should at least refer to people or ask them at the beginning what it is they're looking for. We had a specific problem to solve, that of loneliness. We had to find out how many people were lonely, how many people felt lonely. You know, were our initiatives helping them? We did that. And yes, it has worked, and that's wonderful. But you do have to have people involved who are actually using your services.
Thanks, Emma. I think we're now going to go straight into one of the recorded conversations that we've been having. Well, in fact, I had with Astrid, another member of the governance panel.
Can you just sort of explain, you know, what, you know, your involvement with Ageless Thanet? You know, so like take nothing as read, right?
Okay, right. Well, I've been involved with it since the start of it. Well, I knew of it before that, if you see what I mean, because my previous job role had been on a funded project with Kent County Council and NHS. And so I'd always sort of worked with sort of older people. And I was still doing sort of voluntary, I was doing the minutes on a voluntary basis for a now defunct Thanet Adult Strategic Partnership Group. So I was aware of the fact that there was a funding bid and things like that. And I just thought it sounded quite slightly different from other funding bids and things. So I was sort of involved right from when they had a big meeting down at the Winter Gardens to get the views of the general public or the people that would be, you know, that they were trying to work with. So I went from there, and then of course then they SEC, which became the lead organisation, came up with the idea of having obviously volunteer board members from across different age groups, as in, you know, and things like that. And I just, so we went for an interview, if you could call it that. And yeah, and I got on so I've been involved on the board since the outset of the project, and like I said, I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
In terms of your involvement, that's been very much as a board member.
Yes.
Okay, what does that actually entail? What would you say that's what's been your involvement there?
Okay, well, it's been really good because, like I said, you know, I think they decided it would be more sort of that we would try and do what it was that the people had asked for. When I say people, I mean, you know, follow their sort of ideas and things, because a lot of things previously are always top down, aren't they? They come from top down, and it's I think we wanted to try and get away from this like doing to people, and maybe doing what the people actually might like to see and be involved in and things. So so right from the outset, you know, we were involved as board members. We looked at all the job tender, you know, the tenders that were put in for the different work streams and things like that. And we've sort of been, I think we have been heavily involved in the running of it, which I think is great because, well, I still work, but a lot of us retired. So, but we all come from different backgrounds, and it was quite nice because we all had slightly different perspectives, if you see what I mean. So it's sort of a melting pot of ideas and things, and yeah.
You mentioned that you were you may still be working, I don't know, but you were working with KCC and at the NHS.
Yes.
And you said it was really good to be hearing what people wanted.
Yes.
What was good about that, and what was different, if you sort of mean, from your experience in terms of what I think people often refer to as the system? But I'm assuming adult social care in some kind of way. What was different, and what was good about that, do you think?
Well, I think it was just almost, I think sometimes, I mean, it must be very difficult for a health authority, mustn't it, and a council to sort of take on board all of the issues that are involved. But I think sometimes, again, I think there's this very stereotypical thing, isn't there, about what an ageing person is, what their problems are, and things like that. And I think sometimes the little things that are actually really important get overlooked. And I think it was just nice to sort of see what it was that people, I mean, I was interested in, because, you know, again, because older people, there's always this assumption that older people are quite happy to sit around and play bingo and stuff like that. And I think older people are younger now, if you see what I mean, and their outlooks and what they want to do and things like that. So I think it was just nice to, yeah, just to get some idea of what it was that people would like to see for the future, maybe for, you know, the people and things.
Are there things that come to mind in terms of learning over the past, what, 5 or 6 years? Things that might, you kind of think, oh, you know, this is really interesting. This is what I didn't expect this, or this has worked well better than I thought over the years, in any kind of aspect of the.
Well, I think it's just been nice of the lottery to do. I mean, again, it's these stock phrases, isn't it? There's test and learn, isn't it? I think it's been really nice to be able to have tried something and not get slated if it hasn't worked, if you see what I mean. And also because, you know, it's all very well doing, if the wheel fits or whatever, fine, but also sometimes it's nice to try something else, isn't it? But it's been really nice. It's been quite liberating to think, well, actually, we tried it didn't work, find out why it didn't work and see what you can do differently or things like that. Yeah, so I think that's been quite nice.
Let's just pick up on your reaction to the term empowerment. I mean, what was your bugbear about that term?
Oh, I don't know. The thing is, that's the thing. I mean, I shouldn't be so critical of it, because I always moan at people who moan about things but don't come up with an alternative. So I haven't yet come up with what I would call a suitable. I don't know. It just sounds too. it sounds too bureaucratic. It doesn't sound. It doesn't sound as though it covers sort of what I'd call ordinary people. It's just jargonism, isn't it, and things. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I just don't. It's just a personal thing. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people, but I've never liked it. You know, I just, you know.
I've always been slightly critical of the term because it feels like you know, a person or an organisation has empowered people. It's a bit like they did, like some kind of magic genie. We've given you magic powers or something.
This is it, yeah.
But what crossed my mind when you've been talking about Ageless, Thanet, from the real get-go in the Winter Garden, for example, the very nature of asking people to sit down and think about what their lives are like and what they would like to be different feels like it's valuing them. It isn't just about listening or saying, right, we're now going to shape our services and the like, but it's just giving people time to say, you're important, you know, you're a component. So I think for me, the term empowerment is a bit of a weird term, but I think what's important is when you have interactions between people and organizations where you feel you matter, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
Does that sound a bit more the...
Yeah, I think it is, isn't it? Yeah, I think sometimes we undervalue life in general and things like that. And yeah, we think of ourselves as being irrelevant, don't we? You know, we get up in the morning, we go to do our job and whatever and things like that. But actually, everyone is relevant, aren't they? Everyone matters, and it doesn't really matter what age you are and things like that. And isn't it a shame that we don't sort of, yeah, just embrace it a bit more?
If you put the word empowerment away, like forgot the word empowerment, but if you were to try and describe what you felt Ageless Thanet has meant to people in Thanet, whether those as, you know, as individuals or whether particular people or whether older people in general, but didn't use the word empowerment, what sort of words might you use? What sort of
word? Yeah, see, this is it. Yeah. I don't know. Like you said, I think valuing, isn't it? But then I think sometimes valuing, that's almost, it's like putting a price or a cost on something, isn't it? So yeah, maybe that's not quite the right word either. I don't know. Embracing? I don't know. Yeah, maybe embracing, something like that, you know.
And there's something for me about, you know, in the Ageless Thanet, the way you've been talking is to highlight that we are important ourselves. It's not just we're a service coming to you to ask you what you want, we'll go away and do it, but actually think about what it is that, you know, makes life important for you, or you value, or you enjoy. How does that sound? Is that...
Yeah, no, it is, isn't it? Because I think, because I said, I think people do sort of undervalue themselves sometimes, don't they? Yeah, and you know, and yeah, they might be ordinary, as in like, but you know, everyone's, you know, we're just all people, aren't we? We're all different, and actually, we all have an input into the world, don't we?
Right.
And yeah, I think sometimes we should just stop and reflect on that, and you know, why not? You know, we are important. You know.
So that feels to me that there's a kind of you know, trying to throw the word empowerment away from something. What feels very important is the interaction between Ageless Thanet as an organisation and the way that the organisation has worked with volunteers, the staff, the resources that it's had available, to not just listen, but to then work with local people. Firstly, to highlight how what they want is very important for themselves, and to, you know, to give value to that. So that would seem to me play out with the people that wanted to set up these different clubs, right, and activities. So empowerment is about this interaction, it seems to me, about valuing and respecting. So how does that sort of sound? Is that...
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's sort of about valuing things, like things, isn't it? And it is, I think, valuing people, isn't it? Because that's like a lot of volunteers and wanting to share their experiences and their skills or whatever, you know, because it's lovely. Like one of our groups was she was teaching people Spanish, isn't it? And I think that's great, isn't it? So she can obviously speak Spanish, and she just felt she wanted to share it. And yeah, so it is, isn't it? It's about sharing. It's about sharing as well, isn't it? I think.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I think first of all, thank you to Astrid and obviously Pam before that. Couple of things before we have our next question is one of the words that I picked up from Astrid's contribution just then was the recognition and the appreciation of this melting pot, as she referred to it. I really love that idea of the different perspectives. Something that I'm been very involved with in the past is the notion of whole system working. And I think that's one of the things I've held really dear in the Aging Better programme. And it touches on, again, something that Astrid was referring to. And that is the kind of concept of what or who, or the perception of older people, you know, and often it's compartmentalized, whether you're coming from health or whether you're coming from adult social care or whether you're coming from housing, or whether it's got a perception of what this bit is. And the idea that actually people's lives are far more complex and wholesome and richer than that. And back in 2004, I think it was, I was involved with Better Government for Older People, and we put together a report with the Audit Commission at that time to actually have a whole system approach to what is important to promote independence and well-being. So there's a great deal of consultation, a lot of involvement of older people, as you would expect. And it came up with these 7 dimensions of independence or well-being. And I don't know, Emma, if you're going to read a succinct question to find out what you think are the 7 dimensions of independence. Emma.
Yeah, so if we go back to the Mentimeter, and if you'd like to pop in there, what do you think that contributes to a sense of independence? Love these answers that are coming through. Got lots of answers here. These are all brilliant.
You're going to call time at some point, Emma, or what?
Yeah, I'll give people another 30 seconds to add in. I love how we've all phrased things completely differently, but there seems to be an overriding theme here. Great. Okay, I'll hand you back to Dave.
Okay. Well, the actual report itself was trying to highlight the dimensions in terms of services or consideration in terms of supporting people's independence and well-being, rather than the assumption at the time was health and social care was the main thing for supporting independence amongst older people. Housing usually kind of like a slight second on that. So the 7 dimensions as they come up with them, that in no particular order, was housing in the home, neighbourhood, a sense of being close to friends, shops and other amenities, social activities and social networks and keeping busy was really, really important. Getting out and about, transport, accessible transport and feeling, you know, capable of getting around. And that actually may mean simply pavements that you can walk on. We'll have whole programs separately about sidewalks. Income, finance, obviously, about the ability to actually have some kind of reasonable income on that one. Information is key. Knowing what there is out there. People feel very disenfranchised, and I think the tendency to assume that everyone is on the internet and everything comes through the internet or on Facebook or on social media. We're still disenfranchising loads of people by not thinking carefully about getting through to everybody in terms of the communicating what's out there and about. Last was health and healthy living. Anyway, there we are. That's a quick run through, and we're now on to another governor, which is Emma, back to you to introduce us to the conversation with Alan.
I went through the selection process and was appointed a member of the board. I was a bit concerned about that because I've never done anything like that before, and I think I've been reasonably successful.
What would you say was kind of important about Ageless Thanet? What's been for you? What, you know, is it, you know, that's its worth, as it were? What would you say about that?
I think it's the opportunity, just the opportunity to become involved, rather than just leaving it to the professionals or local politicians or whatever, or council. It was nice just to feel that, yeah, might be able to influence things in some way.
Why do you think it's important, Alan?
I think very often people like myself, or likely most of the people that are involved in Ageless Thanet, what they want is not necessarily what the people that, certainly the local politicians and in some organisations, the organisers, what they think that we need is probably not what we need. A couple of guys wanted to run a Vogue cheese session or a series, you know, where you did all the Vogue and all the hand movements and posing and all sorts of stuff like that. Oh, that sounds interesting. I'll have a go. I ended up having my photograph taken on Margate Beach wearing a tuxedo and a pink chiffon scarf. It went on from there. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I learned a lot about myself, but it was almost like, what's the best way to say it? In one of the sessions we had to walk across a room in a very free or effeminate or whatever word you want to use it. I found that I could do that, but as soon as I'd finished the walk and got to the other end, I switched through and I was back to being me. What that meant, I didn't know, but it enabled me to do all sorts of weird and wonderful things that in my own life I would not normally do. And I think it was this aspect of playing a role, and I really liked that.
What I'm kind of picking up from the way you're talking, Alan, was that something, as you said earlier, about on opportunities that were somewhat different than what you would normally expect, dare I say, older people to be offered or even take up. Yes,
yeah, that's for sure. It's the same. I think on the Sheffield thing, we did a workshop, and it was they tasked me with running that. What I decided was that instead of just having a chat, I think the question was, what does it feel like to be happy or something like that. And I think they were all sitting there and all thinking, oh, this is going to be good, you know, we'll be able to talk. I said, right, I don't want you to talk about it, I want you to draw it. And I gave each one of them a book, and some people were a bit slow in kicking off, but the time went just like that. It was absolutely fantastic. First time I tried that.
What was important to you about that? What do you think, looking back on the process of being asked to do that?
I enjoyed it. It was I was pleased and probably a little bit flattered that they wanted me to go.
What was I'm really, there are several things here, Alan. One is that do you feel you kind of got a place within Ageless Thanet? You know, it feels like a bit like home to your creative exploits.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I have been through sort of self-doubt sessions about all these other people are all involved with these committees and they know these councillors and all this. And I have none of that. I just go along as an individual with an interest in what I might be able to do for the local community.
But you feel that you've really valued that, and it does feel like that you've been, as you said, you're yourself within the whole programme.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I don't think I could put it any better. But also being with the governance panel, you know, you do have some input. I think the best example was probably sorting out the funding for the various projects that were going on, and we had to adhere to a set of rules and score on them. If you
were sort of like got your scorecard, or you know, you're writing a report sheet on Ageless Thanet, what would be the sort of things that you would say about it that you think were important to its the characteristics that you think are important? What are the sort of things that would come to mind?
I think that if you go along to it, no, not an open mind, that sounds funny, doesn't it? It provides you with opportunities. Whether you want to take them or not that's something that maybe a lot of people in their 60s and 70s might not feel that, I should go and do vote chair, or I should go and do silly things and that. But I think Ageless Thanet has given me that opportunity to still try things out, visit places, meet different people. But they can't make you do that. It's something that's got to be within you.
Is there anything, any kind of characteristic amongst the staff team or the programme itself that you think has been really good about people trying things that's been different in Thanet?
Yeah. I think their ability to listen is probably the best thing. And it's, I won't go as far as to say it's been a blast, but it's taken me to some places that I wouldn't have gone to otherwise. I've been to the Houses of Parliament, which I probably would never have done. And if I stopped and thought about it, I've probably been to some other places as well.
I quite like the theme in our conversation is about boxes, and it seems to be what you seem to be saying is that people want to put older people in a box, about how they are and how they should be. And you are a wonderful example of someone who's out of the box, wants to get out of the box. Like, whoa, what box?
I'm in a box, but it's a conceptual one.
It's a conceptual box. I love it.
No one can see it.
So if it were coming back to this theme of empowerment, is that something about how for people to see the box that they want to be in, And if they want to get out of it, fine. If they want to make it a very different kind of box, then that's fine. But it's all about helping people to see, like, who they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for a lucky few, they can realise lifelong ambitions. But I just imagine everybody's got a little list of things they wish they should have done when they were younger. But nothing to stop them trying now.
If you were to do like a conceptual piece about empowerment, what sort of things come to mind?
Wow. I like the idea of being in a glass box. That's the first thing. I also like the idea of being in a room with loads and loads of doors. And each one takes you to whatever. I don't know, you wouldn't know what was behind the door until you opened it and had a look. You open it, have a look, I think, oh, this looks interesting. I think that's pretty much what I do.
And it feels like a mixture of kind of the curiosity, the courage, and the confidence, just to open those doors, choose which one, and realise that there are those opportunities there. That feels like, from what you've been saying, I've heard you say.
Yep. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I think it's been good that the people that have been involved with Ageless and they've been open-minded enough to let people like me be themselves. There was a degree of trepidation when I went onto the board. I wonder what they're going to turn me into. But they didn't turn me into anything. I don't know what it was. So.
I think you've I think they've had a richer experience for you being you, and that's been accepted both ways, if you sort of mean. It's been a sort of an exchange, a reciprocal exchange there. Yeah. That's
very kind of you. Thank you.
Well, I think it's true, and I'm sure that they would say that. But it's you being you for what you bring, your perspective. I'm sure has really added to what their thinking and perspectives are. And I hope you go on challenging other people's perceptions of what older people, not only like, do, and who they are. Good for you. Good for you.
Sometimes I think just by being who I am and just talking to people, it makes them realise that it doesn't all stop when you're 30, 40, 50. You can carry on as long as you want.
Hi, well, again, a wonderful thanks to Alan, another member of the governance team there. Some of the words I've written down in talking to Alan are the process that Ageless Thanet offered in terms of supporting and encouraging people to become who they are, as it were, self-awareness, self-discovery, this sense of becoming. I actually tried to remember, I think there was some phrase that David Bower used as well about aging is a process where you become the person you are. But no doubt I've misquoted that completely. I think we're on for another final pre-recorded interview with the team. This is where all the action is, with the team. Is that right, Emma?
Ian Barker. I work for an organisation called Your Leisure. We're a leisure trust, run leisure centres, hospitality venues. As a non-for-profit organisation, we have charitable objectives, and I'm very proud to say I work for the community team within Your Leisure, and even more proud as a partner on the Ageless Thanet project, part of the National Ageing Better programme. And our responsibility within that programme is to provide wellbeing activities for people over 50, physical and non-physical activities.
Hi, Angela Drew Robinson, and I'm a life planner with Citizens Advice. I work one-to-one with our clients over a 3-month period.
My name's Claire Shelton. I'm the Director of Wellbeing at Social Enterprise Kent. I joined Social Enterprise Kent as part of the Ageless Thanet project about 2.5 years ago, managing the community fund, which was a really great strand of the project, directly giving funding to grassroots organisations to support older people's initiatives in the area. Then worked on the age-friendly business work stream, and more recently, as I say, I'm now the Director of Wellbeing, so I'm managing our universal wellbeing services contract for over 50s across Thanet. Is such, but directly using the experiences that we've learned from Ageless Thanet and working with partners like Your Leisure and CAB, we, Social Enterprise Kent, were awarded the contract from Kent County Council for universal wellbeing services for older people. And so we're going to be using some of the learnings from Ageless Thanet to directly influence that contract over the next 3 years.
I'm Emma Fair, and I've worked in various roles for the Ageless Thanet project over the last few years. I'm currently working as the Learning Officer, which involves assessing the impact and looking at what we've learned over the course of the project.
The chosen theme is co-production and empowerment. I'm curious, I know we've touched on this in the past, but how did that come about? What was the process of that surfacing as a concept of focusing on empowerment?
I was lucky enough to be there from the start of the project, and it was very clear and evident that the purpose of the project was always to have the older people at the heart of everything we do, and always engage with them, ask them how, why, where, so they can play a full part in that. Because we didn't have the answers, and why would we have the answers? We needed to ask the older people of Thanet, how we can help them to age better. So the empowerment bit and the co-production bit, I think, was pretty much there from day one, because it was all about consulting with and asking and involving the older people of Thanet rather than doing to. So I think it was there pretty much from day one.
Just going to talk about the community fund, really, and that the whole ethos behind it was about empowering small local organisations who maybe wouldn't necessarily have applied for funding from another route, but had a real sense of what was needed in their community, because they were working with groups of older people. They were, lots of them were organisations that were specifically for older people. We had a set of criteria asking them to demonstrate that the idea has been supported by other older people. Can it, really show how it reduces social isolation and loneliness? The focus on sustainability as well going forward. So it was really about allowing those grassroots community organisations to have a chance to really make a difference to the people they were supporting. Plus, we had 3 members of the Ageless Thanet Governance Board who sat on the Community Fund panel. So they were all over 50 Thanet residents who, were really committed to the idea of supporting Ageless Thanet and supporting Thanet to become a better place to grow older. And they, although we kind of supported the decision-making process, they really took the time to look at all the applications, to assess them according to the criteria, and to really be involved in making that decision about what they felt would benefit the community as a whole. So, we had some really great outcomes from that, which we can talk about later.
Okay, let's throw out the question, empowerment, because I think it's really quite an interesting, we use these words, don't we? What does it mean to you? What do you think?
For me, it's empowerment, people learning to take responsibility and for their actions as well, you know, take responsibility for them, learn to take responsibility for themselves, and learn that they have got a life and that they can use that life and don't need to hide. And building, again, confidence, keep coming back to that, self-confidence, self-esteem, self-respect. What I come across as individually working with people that have had changes in their life, a lot of them have lost confidence for whatever reason, for whatever has happened. Sometimes it can be they've lost a partner or a spouse who they've been completely reliant on all their life to do everything. So you're sort of teaching, they're learning how to do things for themselves again and starting out all over again. And it is quite amazing, because I get to see people individually for 3 months, how I can follow their journey and what works. And it's quite impressive sometimes, not everybody, but, you know, most people do realise that they can do things for themselves. And it's just like a blossom growing, you know.
I'm thinking, you know, picking up on Angela's point, actually, I think for me, empowerment is about giving people the tools to do things themselves. So whether it's the support that Angela's got, whether it's the support we gave to some of those community organisations to first access our fund, which then enabled them to then go on and access further funding to increase the reach of what they were doing in sustainability. So it's about enabling people to do things for themselves, but in a kind of supportive and supported way until they feel confident that they can go ahead and do things for themselves. And that will vary according to who you're working with.
One of the things I've really appreciated is being able to work with individuals and to a bespoke agenda, so I can work differently with every different person, and that makes a huge difference, you know. And although we're talking 50 and over, there are people that are in their 50s that can't do what some people in their 80s can do, you know. I mean, ill health and challenging circumstances for people in their early 50s. I've got people that can't go out of the house in their 50s because of their ill health, you know. And that is a huge challenge for people with physical and mental disabilities, that mean it's very difficult for them to get out and about unless they had some kind of individual support to get them out. And obviously we had a pandemic where I can't see people face to face, or even go around and see them, or try and see what is around. But for me, I suppose for our projects, it's always learning about the person and what their past interests have been, what kind of person they are, learning about that person and seeing if there's some spark that can be. And some people do have a light bulb moment, you know, and they realise, and I've had people say, oh, I've realised I've got to do this for myself. And that's brilliant. Or I've realised it's okay to ask for help, which is huge, you know. And if you can get those light bulb moments along the way, that is absolutely, and it doesn't happen for everybody. And there are people, unfortunately, stuck in what I've learned a term called learned helplessness, when they, for whatever reason, have learned always to be dependent and going from one person to another person, whether it's social services, whether it's support workers, and they've never managed to break out of that circle. And the 1 or 2 clients that we've had like that, it's very difficult to move them onto fit, you know, to go out, do things for themselves. But that's just the way it is. But for the majority of people, there is something that can help them to move forward in whatever, and every person's moving forward will be different to the other. It's a very unique and special thing, you know. But at the end, what you've hoped is that, yes, I mean, the idea is to lead all whatever challenges you've got, physically, mentally, that you know, you possibly can have a more fulfilling life in the future, and it's not the end. That whatever's happened to you doesn't have to be the end, but you might have to live, it might be a new way of thinking of life, or a new way of doing things.
What it feels like is that kind of you are aging is us. You know, there's the branding, I know it's Ageless Thanet, but the feel of it is that anything to do with aging, you are interested and you'll listen
and you'll attempt to support and act upon that. That's the feeling I'm getting over the past few years, right? There's no other system that does that. You know, if you've got health and social care issues, you'll either go to, you know, adult social care, or you go to a GP, or single things. But as a concept, as a kind of feeling of a rounded approach to, if you're aging, and whatever that might be, it may be about exercise, it may be doing fun stuff. My God, you know, Vogue Chi, God, you know, doesn't get more fun and crazy and flaky than that, I think, from what I know. And it's like, we're interested, you know, aging is us. And I just think as a system, as a concept, I think it's absolutely bloody brilliant, really, just as an outsider. Because otherwise it's all very compartmentalized, you know.
I was thinking along the lines of what you were saying about sort of listening and you know, whatever anyone's issues around aging, you know, we will help with that. And I think that the whole aspect of like co-production and listening to people, it's really has built up that sense of trust. And along with what Ian said about having such a strong brand, I mean, we've had people come into the office because they're experiencing domestic abuse. And I mean, that's not our specialist area, that's, you know, that's not what we do. But, you know, we were then able to signpost her to the local domestic abuse charity. So I think, you know, if we'd not had that sort of co-production in the beginning and then going throughout the project where we listened to people, they, you know, I don't know if we would have had that sense of trust that's been built up within the community.
That's one of the key things over the, you know, the decades that people have talked about, you know, working with these older people, this gang. I speak for my people now. Is this trusted point of contact? You know, feeling able to approach someone who you think may not actually be the person, but would probably know, but you trust them enough that they would give you an interested response. Wow, a great thanks to the insights and contributions of all the team there. That's fantastic. This is now the point where we're going to move into breakout rooms. And so you'll have an opportunity to introduce yourself and share your journey, as it were, so far, and certainly a place to ask questions or tease out some of the issues to do with empowerment and co-production.
If we're having trouble, maybe we've had a few people drop off and they've had to leave. It might just be worth that we stay within this session if we're having problems.
I don't see it as a technical problem. I see that as we can share the richness of all of us together. So I don't know, do people want to introduce themselves or go through that, or unmute? Anyone want to kick off with their journey on co-production or thoughts about the session so far?
I have a question about, so I'm from Magic Me, and we're an intergenerational arts charity based in Bethnal Green. And yeah, I wondered about the kind of the reality of how much work it is to support people in order to be able to do this. I think that co-production is something that kind of organically happens within our projects, but we don't have anything kind of formalized, and we'd really like to, but we're a very small team and we want to make sure that we aren't, I guess, biting off more than we can chew, and then we're not able to support people to do what they need to do, really. So yeah, just if you have like a dedicated staff member who I guess sits in on all the meetings and kind of, yeah, how that works.
I'm gonna obviously ask the team to respond to that, Emily. I know a little bit about Magic Me, and one of the things that crosses my mind immediately is the time duration of the connection you have with individual people or schools or you know, the centres that you work with. But I don't know who wants to pick that up from the team.
Bash, Dave.
Okay.
Hi, Emily. Thanks for joining us. So if I've understood your question right, it's about the amount of time involved and how that can be quite intrusive on your day job, so to speak, and how we manage that. So I think the way that I would answer that is that when we've gone on a journey with an older person, or more than not an older group, a group of older people, the time invested at the start is greater than it is at the end, which I guess is an obvious statement. But from the point of view of managing the workload around that, that's helped us. We purposely went through that process knowing that there'd be time invested at the start, significant, and less at the end, and in some cases at the moment hardly any time invested at all. And having that realization as a partnership, so a partnership approach, we could share that workload. We could play to each other's strengths within that and that process, and we had various examples of that, of how we would work together as one and share that workload. So the amount of time that was needed to be invested at the start obviously was greater than at the end, as people stepped forward and took responsibility, felt empowered, and so on and so forth. But when we broke it down at the start and what was needed, the amount of work an individual would need to have to put in was significantly less. So in summary, yes, there's more work involved at the start than the end, obviously, but if you've got a strong team, even maybe a small team, and or you can bring in volunteers that have particular skill sets to support you on that journey, you can break down that workload at the start by playing to each other's strengths with an honest approach to each other, and the strengths that the partnerships bring. I don't know if that helps, Emily.
That's really useful, thank you. Yeah.
I'm going to pick up on that point, Ian, as well, and be a bit provocative. One of the things that I think is challenging about all these programs is actually, one, ownership, and the other is the funding and the resources. And I think the pandemic in particular has challenged all of us to be thinking far more resourcefully about how we go forward. And I think we often tend to think about, well, what money, what's in the kitty to do this? Where's this money come from? Big lottery or whatever it might be. And I think we perhaps need to be a bit more canny about doing the things that we want to do that make sense, because the actual, co-production, empowerment, supporting people, it makes sense on any kind of terms. But maybe we should be thinking about far more of contributions in time. I don't just mean volunteering as such, but other ways of constructing a kind of reciprocal arrangement locally in local communities, and be a bit more canny about outsourcing and also sort of crowdfunding, whatever you might want to be thinking about, rather than dependent upon top down, either state government or the outcome of our gambling habits to be funding us in the future. I don't know if that helps at all, but anyway, any other points, contributions?
Can I pose a question, Dave?
Yeah.
I'm Ken Scott. I'm from Kent Arts and Wellbeing, which is an organisation based in Kent, using creativity to improve wellbeing primarily for older people. Before I pose the question, if I can put in a disclaimer in a sense, because I know what I'm about to say contains some inconsistency, and that is that if you go into co-production, given there's an upfront cost, do you do that before you put in a funding bid? And if you don't, how can you construct a funding bid where you can't actually determine precisely what you're going to offer because it's conditional upon having gone through a co-production process? That's the question.
I think there are so many responses to that, Ken, if I might. One is, I think what you're highlighting is some of the, dare I say it, failings, I think, of our current system of funding, where the inordinate amount of supposed research and justification for the use of the monies that they will then make available. It was interesting. Only this morning I was thinking about a lot of these sort of requirements of any kind of funding process is because it's public money, and we need to be, responsibly dispensing this because it's a scarce resource. And I'm thinking, well, it's our bloody money in the first place, usually, if it's state funding. And I think we should have far more to do with the way it's actually dispensed. So I think co-production, I'd be curious to take back to the community fund, let alone local authorities, about actually how they dispense local money, or the community fund itself, how they have far more co-production in a way that people can actually get access to funds. I'm expecting some members of the team to be responding to this as well, Ken, but I'm actually obviously responding because I do think the funding processes now, you actually have to say what the outcome is going to be before you've even put the bloody money in or even done the work. And if it's innovative work, I mean, how can you ever anticipate what the outcomes are going to be? Which is why I think the test and learn sort of culture is an extremely good one. But I don't know, Ian, Emma, Heather, do you want to respond to Ken here? Yeah, Heather?
Yeah, I was just going to actually talk about the test and learn approach that we've been able to sort of go through the project by the lottery being so flexible. If we couldn't meet an outcome, as long as we could show that we had attempted to and how we'd gone through that process, we could review that and make changes. And that's unusual for a funder. You can tend to be sometimes quite restricted by targets and outcomes that you have to meet. But by keeping those conversations open with the National Lottery Community Fund, we were able to make changes as we've developed through the project. So, and of course, you'll know as well, Ken, is trying to get statistics. Quite often that data isn't up to date online. That can build barriers as well, can't it?
If I might just compound, because it's a great question, Ken. I think what we should be doing is challenging funders far more to get on board with the journey themselves before sort of sitting back and waiting for you to do all the legwork, and then for them to turn around and say, "Oh no, sorry, it doesn't quite meet our requirements." I think there should be far more co-production, co-involvement, co-commissioning with the funders themselves, get their hands dirty, and actually even at the outset of the idea, to be giving small parcels of money to actually assist that resourcing of that process to then get a fully, sharp application itself. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in on this one. Great question.
Yeah, David, it's Ian again. Yeah. Thanks, Ken. It is a great question. I guess I'll try and reflect back even before my time on the project, and I was there when the project started delivery, so once the funding had agreed. But prior to that, my understanding was that there were quite a few organisations involved in researching, reaching out to the older people of Thanet, with the I guess with the carrot that could be there to be involved in the project, but not the guarantee. So when I first joined the project, when Your Leisure, as my employer, had been awarded as being one of the delivery partners, and speaking to my boss who was involved in that process, he led me to the backstory where the lead partner, SEK, had approached quite a few local organisations, Your Leisure being one of them, to say, right, this is potential for our, for our area. Do you want to get involved in helping us, research this, get feedback, etc., etc. By the way, there's no guarantee that you could be part of this going forward, but there's potential. So I guess it comes back to a similar point that I made for Emily, whereas if all of these organisations are involved, it then reduces the amount of time and work involved. It doesn't dispel Dave's point that the process perhaps shouldn't be like that, and funders should get involved in that process more. But having a greater number of organisations involved at the start, helping build what that project could be, certainly again helped the amount of time that each person had to be involved in.
That's helpful, Ken.
What's interesting for me is I've just been successful in getting a bid to support veterans in Thanet, and in order to get the bid, we were required to have said that we'd consulted with veterans, and I made that commitment, but it's only since I've got the bid and I'm starting to move forward that I realised that the consultation I did was wholly inadequate. And, you know, I've learned so much in 5 or 6 weeks about organisations that are supporting veterans that wasn't known beforehand. So the logic of doing it, if you like, the importance of doing it has been reinforced. But of course, the cost to have done that beforehand, not knowing you would have got funding, was and is quite significant. And you know, there's the rub. You know, what sort of risk are you prepared to take? What sort of investment are you prepared to make to enhance your chances?
Well, it's interesting you say that. I noticed that Jenny is on this call, and I'm reminded of a conversation that we were having earlier today. And I think it was Jenny that was saying that, I'm sure it is the same Jenny from Sheffield, was saying that actually they may not have got it right, but at least they're doing it, if you sort of mean. And I think from listening to what you've just said, Ken, it's actually, we should, you know, be unashamedly risking and being honest. I think, again, a point that Ian raised about being honest about you're trying your best and you're open to listen, but as it were, but thank heavens that people do you know, walk that line and trust that they're going down the right path, and you've learned from that. But any other points, any other questions, things that people want to raise, challenge us, provoke us?
Well, I do have another point, if I'm not hogging it, which is that there's a huge opportunity for us supporting each other. So part of my plan in terms of moving forward will be to engage with Social Enterprise Kent, because if I want to access veterans, you know, you're a very good route to actually being able to do that. And conversely, we will be offering something to Thanet veterans, which may be something that you would find helpful as part of your program. So I think it's, you know, having sessions like this where we actually learn about what each other is doing provides benefits that are well worth having.
I was just going to say, Ken, that's certainly something we're always keen to do. We always say that if we can't support a person, we'll know somebody who can.
Yeah.
And it's not about being precious about people going through necessarily the Ageless Thanet project. It's making sure that the person has the right support for them. It might be in their particular area or town that they need it, or we might not have that specialism. So yeah, we're always, if you follow our Facebook page, we're always sharing information on other projects that offer services for older people. And I've put my email address in the chat bar, Ken, sorry. So as you can maybe pop me an email with some further details, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, points people want to raise?
I think I just one of the things I wanted to add, just from my perspective, I work as a community engagement officer for Ageless Thanet, is that, you know, co-production has been so positive for us in that it's encouraged not just the extroverts at the activities, but also the introverts, in that, you know, because our team have been there and our volunteers have been there to support them, that by us having conversations with them, they're encouraged to have their voice and get more involved. So for example, I remember going to an event where a gentleman was sitting at the side and just didn't engage, and I made sure that I went over and I had a chat with him one-to-one, and then just said, I'm going to go and sit over there. Why don't you join me? And he did, and he was so engaged, and he became a committee member of the Ageless Thanet Club actually from that. And he said to me at the end of the session, if you hadn't done that, I would have left and I probably wouldn't have come back. But by you coming over and engaging me one-to-one, because he wasn't the most extrovert person, you know, that enabled him and gave him the power to then go on and help make changes in the club that he wanted to do and to offer his skills and knowledge.
I think we have a final question, don't we, lined up for us, Emma? Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Just one last question. Nice, easy one, we hope. So we're just interested, has this session helped you to reflect on how co-production can impact empowerment? I think that's pretty much everyone. So lovely.
I think we're due to finish at 15:15. So I guess unless there is any other things that people might want to just contribute or say, it's for me to thank everybody, thanking everybody, participants as well, for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. It's been a fantastic process, I have to say, just from my point of view as an outsider. The whole process of co-producing this session has been so insightful and enjoyable, and wonderful meeting the people that that are on the government's panel as well as the team itself. I don't think anything you might want to add, Emma, Heather, or Tina, or Ian. Anybody want to say any more things?
I think just thanks everyone for coming, and as Heather's already put in the chat, our email address is there if you'd like to find out any more information about what we've been doing here at Ageless Thanet. And then Mia, please do get in touch.